Hello and welcome to Catholic Unscripted episode 21. I'm Catherine Bennett.
I'm Mark Lambert.
I'm Gavin Ashenden. Look how slim Mark Lambert is.
We're still here. We're still here. Do not be afraid. Thank you for all those people who've been in touch and who've commented on our previous shows, on show 20, and to somebody who contacted me this week from Thailand to say thank you for our output and was a bit concerned that we might have been prevented from what we're doing, but it's not the case. We've just had a short break because the three of us have been in Chicago, which has been fantastic, on a kind of whirlwind tour of the city, meeting fellow Catholics, and we just got back a week ago. So we're a little behind. I've written about it for the Catholic Herald in a piece called Traumatized by Beauty in Catholic Chicago. So go and read about it there if you want to hear a bit more. But it's been fantastic. So we're just back together for the first time since then. It was good, wasn't it, Mark?
Well, I think it was unexpectedly good, wasn't it? We kind of had a low expectation going out there, and you hear lots of bad things about Chicago as a city, but when we got there, we were just blown away by lots of different things. The beauty of the churches was extraordinary, like the amount of history from the immigrants who'd gone out there and built all these amazing communities, but also the sheer faith of the people, how alive Catholicism is in Illinois, and I think in the States in general. But I mean, it seemed very concentrated, didn't it? Not just on a Sunday mass sort of way, but in a really everyday sort of way, which was so good to see. So many people at mass, and interested in the faith and interested in what we had to say. So I think we were really blessed.
Yeah, we visited some really beautiful churches. And as you say, it wasn't just mass. We went to, actually, the churches themselves were just breathtakingly beautiful. And real effort had gone into that, to making them that way. And we went to Vespers, didn't we? We went to a TLM, we went to the most beautiful Novus Ordo. But everything had this reverence to it, and the churches were pretty full. We were going on weekdays and on Sundays, and whenever we went, I felt the churches were pretty full. And there was one occasion actually when mass had just ended, and the priest that we were with was trying to talk to us about the church and show us around, and this woman came up to us and said, "Stop talking. You're in Jesus' house." And I think the first instinct is to think, don't stop telling us off. But in fact, she was quite right. And that's one of the things that was so wonderful, is that there wasn't that sense which you can get in some churches at the beginning and end of mass, people milling in, chatting, catching up with each other. I mean, I'm very fortunate here in London. We don't have that, but I know many parishes that does happen. So there's a real sense of that sacredness, that reverence from as you enter the church until you leave. It was beautiful. Gavin?
Well, it was the most amazing trip, and we were doing two things. We were speaking to the Catholic community, reminding them of what a joy and a privilege it was to be a Catholic, particularly in the face of the culture wars and the struggle for the church that needs to take place. And you two were both fantastic. I mean, we've never done this before. We were road testing our evangelistic and it's encouragement, and I was just blown away by what you both said. That was one thing. Then we were also meeting educationalists, because we're involved in defending the integrity of Catholic education. We have a conference in Stonyhurst in 10 days' time. Sign up if you want to know anything at all about it, because what we're trying to do is strengthen Catholic educationalists against the onslaught of secularism and the loss of nerve. And what we discovered in America, as so often happens, is the Americans are way ahead of us. They've been doing home education for a while. They have these extremely competent organizations that oversee and act as overarching structures for education. And we met the most impressive people, and they taught us a great deal. And the third thing was, it dealt with my European sense of superiority, because I thought we had all the buildings and all the culture. And when I got there, I discovered that, okay, they'd copied some of the European buildings, but they had they'd improved on them. They were new. The gold leaf was new. Their buildings were full. The Catholic architecture was extraordinary. And the very last thing of all, there was one moment when we joined in a conference on the Institute of Religious Life. They had their annual meeting there. Not only did we meet a large number of nuns, which, as you know, always causes me a particular degree of intense pleasure, but we heard there was a presentation in the evening, and a leading jurist, American jurist, was given a prize. And he gave a lecture, slightly over long, 45 minutes. But in it, he told us how very nearly America became a Catholic state as opposed to a WASP state, how very nearly with Kennedy. And who was it that killed him? We don't know. But how very nearly under the Kennedys, the Catholic influence in America began to predominate. And when you go to Chicago, you can see why. Because the place was full of Catholics, full of I may say money, full of generosity. They'd simply given their money to build their churches and build the Catholic infrastructure. And so much of my European superiority was dealt a severe blow. And I found myself just overwhelmed by their courage, their punchiness, their devotion, their piety, their resourcefulness, and their willingness to really be faithful Catholics. Although there's this question of the extent to which Catholicism is ready for the culture wars as they're about to overwhelm us.
Yeah. The other thing that really hit all of us was that you would just walk down the street and meet Catholics. It really is a very Catholic city, and you'd go into a coffee shop and you'd say why you're there, because we're doing this Catholic Unscripted over in the US, and they were Catholics, and the person next door was Catholic, and the person on the street was Catholic. Now you've got that sense of cultural Catholicism that they're also struggling with, of course. But what you say there, what's beautiful is about that wonderful church we went to in Chicago, St. Mary of the Angels, which is the Opus Dei run it. It's a Polish church. It was really, 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 I cannot emphasize, if you get a chance to go, it was so, so beautiful. And they're also saying, actually, this has been built. This is for the people, by the people, as you've said, Gavin. And they had a bowling alley at the bottom, and they had a hall at the side, and everything. Life was centered around the parish, and there wasn't a distinction between your home, your social life, your member of the church, and the people themselves would go to work and then go and work on the church and put their funds and their effort and their sweat into this real labor of love. And this is what's so missing when we hear these arguments about, well, why doesn't these sort of false Judas type give the money to the poor arguments? Why don't we just, why doesn't the Catholic Church, with all its wealth and its cathedrals and its paintings and its art and its posh palaces, why don't they just flog it all if they care about the poor? And you think, well, what would that actually do other than put it all into the hands of the rich? When in fact, now it's for everyone. These beautiful, stunning, breathtaking, life-changing buildings with Christ at the centre are for the poorest of the poor. The person with no home can go and appreciate them and be part of them and be a member of the body of Christ and worship together. What would you lose then if you say, for the sake of the poor, let's flog them all? So there was that too.
What was also interesting was that they'd gone through their own bad time. So in 1980, this particularly beautiful church was about to be pulled down, and then an Opus Dei priest moved there and single-handed revived the whole place, drawing in this muscular and determined devotion. And so it's not been there all the way through since the 1880s. They've had their ups and downs, but one of the things I think we learned was traditional Catholicism is the engine which renews the piety of the church and releases the resources. And it was very inspirational.
I thought that the charism at St. John Cantius, that the idea of restoring the sacred, which was at the centre of everything they do there, was particularly powerful, especially in the culture that we've got at the moment. And you really got a sense. I mean, that like St. John Cantius, 5,000 families go there on a Sunday. It was really powerful. They received 36 people into the church through RCIA at Easter, and they had 16 on the books already for this year. Yeah. And they had more vocations to the order than the whole Archdiocese of Chicago, which was extraordinary. So, like, you really see that I've been looking at the website, and the way that they handle the political situation and everything is just masterful. They really do a beautiful job. But you can see the way that the things that we're always talking about the transcendentals and the beauty builds culture, and you can see the culture that they've built up around that community and how people are drawn to it from sometimes a long way away. And that is incredibly powerful to see it actually happening, isn't it? Like, we talk about it, don't we? And, on the small scale, like certainly in my parish, I see that sort of on a small scale, but to see it on such a grand scale like that, I thought was extremely interesting.
And they have confidence. Sorry, Mark.
The other thing was that lovely lady that we met at the Chesterton Academy, May, who said that she'd moved there from Texas, hadn't she? And someone had said to her, "Oh, you'll love Illinois. You'll love Chicago. It's a Catholic, Catholic Disneyland or something." And she said, she was like, "What? Chicago?" And when she got there, the milkman was Catholic, and the doctor was Catholic, and the dentist was Catholic, and everyone was Catholic. And that's, like you say, Catherine, that's sort of what it was like, wasn't it?
Yeah.
They had confidence, courage, and commitment, and it was very refreshing, very inspirational. And they liked what we had to say too. So that was we brought something to the table, and there was a mutual blessing going on.
Yeah, definitely.
I also was really inspired by the priest who took us around, who's kind of a humble guy, so I'm not going to mention his name, but he became a real friend over the course of the week. And I particularly, it was a very just normal parish that he worked at, and he took me to a couple of places like the Shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe. I think that was on the last day. We all went. We all went at some point.
And then you went when we went, yeah.
And he was just, I don't know if it was the same when you were there, but he was just, people were coming up to him all the time, constantly. And he just very gently was ministering to them, and they were asking him questions, and, he was blessing them or talking to them about their relatives. And the whole thing for me was that he had that very beautiful idea that he was there to, to bring God to the people. And it just was very, very genuine. And, I think it was a great lesson for us. I certainly felt like, one of the things that he said all week, wasn't it, was thanks be to God. Everything we were going, "Oh, thanks, mate, thanks for that." And he kept saying, "Thanks be to God." And I found myself living that since I've been back, really everything, just saying, like, and in the sense that I'm so grateful for the providence of our week together, which was absolutely an experience I'll never forget. And what was wonderful, guys, was we had all this, it was like the best retreat I've ever been on, so there was a spiritual thing to it, and our friendship and our humor. Like, before we started recording, Catherine and I were saying, Gavin, that we nearly wet ourselves walking back into the cemetery that night. Do you remember when we were saying that we should all present it in Stets? We should present the next episode in Stetsons and with our 6-shooters. It was amusing at the time, anyway. But we
didn't say all of us. We just said Gavin.
Yeah, well, okay. I was trying not to single him out, but we all had such good fun, didn't we? As much as anything else, and it was lovely to eat together, and to go and visit people, be part, and the way that we met, like the way that when we had a meeting that we worked together, I thought was really, really powerful. And that first talk that we gave at St Mary of the Angels everything just seemed to really go so well, and we were just in our element, weren't we? That was sort of how it felt.
Yeah.
Well, you both made them cry. Your stories. I mean,
top of everyone's list.
I did. Well, you were both incredibly moving, and it was. I mean, the humanity and the inspiration of what you both brought was really fantastic. It was a very, very powerful trip, and I think one of the things that came out of it for me was a sense that although we're one nation divided by 2 languages, or is it 2 nations divided by 1 language, there's a sense that things both similar but very different, and doing some kind of handshake about the way in which Catholic education must be defended and looked after across these 2 cultures it's quite problematic. There's no there's no immediate synchromesh between them, and yet each have things to bring. We have to warn them quite how bad the culture wars are getting, because they have the most, their Catholic state schools have the most incredible resources. They're very wealthy, but they have things to tell us because they've worked for it and prepared for it, and they've kept themselves out of the hands of the state in a way that nobody over here can. But we may soon have to try. So there were things we both can bring each other, I think, and that's one of the things, one of the elements in our going.
I was talking to Ed today, who's doing a talk at our dice thing. We were exchanging emails, weren't we, Catherine? And that was one of the things that really, I found that there was was synchronous, was the idea, like the Socratic method that we were talking about at the Chesterton Academy, and how we need to have an integral model of Catholic education, as Newman said in his idea of university. That the idea that that Catholicism isn't just like holy water. Excellent stuff. It's not just something. It seems to be a box ticking exercise in our country all too often, and that teachers, it's something that they have to do to sort of appeal to a certain, I don't know, their employers, the bishop, I don't know, whoever it is, maybe the parents, and they have to sort of go, oh yeah, that's the Catholic thing, and they put it in a little box and they bring it out to show you. And really, you have to wonder if they actually believe in the power and the majesty of, like, we need to put our Catholicity at the centre of what we do as a school, as Newman said, like as the spine, and it should inform all the different disciplines that we teach, and it should be at the centre of everything that we do. And I thought that was really obvious in that in the Chesterton Academy and their model particularly. So I certainly took a lot away, and I've been doing some reading on that as well. Hopefully we can sort of help with bringing that model over, perhaps a bit more to the UK.
Yeah, it's fantastic. They were great. You've mentioned the Chesterton Academy a couple of times there. We visited one of them, the head there, a guy called Dan Gennaro, and we thought he was just fantastic. Oh, Gavin's gone. Oh, he's back.
Perhaps we can put a link to his. We can put a link to Dan's Substack as well. So, yeah.
Anything we can do to support this man. This man has made many, many sacrifices in order to do what he's doing, and what they're doing is just fantastic. It's not dissimilar to what's happening here in the packed schools, the Cedars, the Laurels, Oakwood. There are a few schools here, and they're following that similar kind of model. But you're absolutely right. It's rooted right at the centre. The Catholic faith is not an add-on. It's not a box-ticking exercise. It roots everything. Not even the Catholic faith, although it is. It's Christ, but it's just also looking at who we are as humans, what we are as humans, and what is the purpose of a human person, and how might we achieve that purpose and become saints and sort of grow in holiness. So that's all at the centre of that.
Really good example would be when I was a governor. I got into a lot of trouble because although the school was a Catholic secondary school, the reading material that they were getting the kids to read for English was absolutely abysmal, and that was one of my main sort of bugbears. Was, why aren't we giving them inspirational stuff that will prepare them for adulthood, that they'll be engaged with, and help them to understand life? And if you get all those elements right and engage the children with that, surely it's got to be a better way of teaching them.
Yeah, I thought I think I made some notes. I'm trying to find them. Dan, this head at this Chesterton Academy, was saying they really think through really intentionally their book, their literature as the students progress through school. So they look at the Frankenstein. Where does man turn? To science, and it fails him. Then it turns to the occult, and that fails him. Then it's 1984. It's where are we headed, and why that will fail us. So they're not just randomly plucked. There's a very intentional way of approaching all things, that you expose truth rather than proselytize in that way. It's just fantastic. It really is. So we'll definitely put some links there. The education also, one thing that so what you said there links to St. John Cantius, as they call it, St. John Cantius, which is this idea of restoring the sacred. Is it seemed to be at the heart of everything we experienced in Chicago during our visit, and definitely some really important links were made between the two countries that we know that we'll build on over the years. And one of the brothers at St. John Cantius, in fact, the father at St. John Cantius, he's one of 3 siblings in his family who have gone on to be priests or religious. And he had a very interesting story about his brother who, sort of between 18 and 30, for example, or 28 or something, was actually living in the woods, a total hippie, and had given up on everything, wasn't a Christian, and is now a very faithful Catholic priest. And we talked about how actually it was, and he would say this, it was his experience in nature that helped to bring him to see what is true. And as we talk about this problem, this gap, we want to restore the sacred. Part of that is restoring our awe of creation. We're so distant from it. We live in such an artificial world, an increasingly artificial world, with talk of a metaverse stepping even further into artificiality, and of course a contraceptive mentality. All of this is artificial, and the more artificial we are, the more removed we are from the sacred. So also in those schools and in those churches was a lot of talk about that recognition of the beauty of nature and not distancing ourselves from the natural. But anyway, it was absolutely fantastic. It was wonderful. Wonderful.
Both men were sons of the woman politician known as the Saskatchewan Sledgehammer, who was a Pentecostal, and they'd both been converted not only to Christianity but to traditional Israel and the other kind, Catholicism, and it was just extraordinary to see that their life journey and the world back to the supernatural and the sacred every time.
Yeah, good. So that's our trip, and that's why we've been off your screens and off your podcast for a couple of weeks. We are really trying to work. We have lots of plans in place. We won't talk about them just yet, but we are really trying to work towards a more frequent output, and we will get to a dedicated weekly output. So thank you for sticking with us. It's a big week, Gavin, because on Saturday we have the coronation. That's our next big topic, the King's coronation, and you've written about this and spoken about this week. So it's over to you to tell us more.
Well, yes, when we were in Chicago, I read a quick article, and I thought I'll try and put it up as a YouTube podcast. And as you both know, during the days, I would stop you and say, "Oh, look at the numbers! Look at the numbers!" And in fact, they got to 340,000 views. I've never been so excited in my life. But the reason for saying that is, this was all to do with the interfaith issues, whether or not Charles was going to succeed in inviting Muslims to say prayers in a Christian ceremony. I think the two issues, as they've crystallized for me, are the innate anti-Catholicism that remains at the heart of the establishment and of the liturgy, and of the way in which Charles has to make a decision about whether or not he sticks with Christianity or he goes with relativist secularism. And so it's extraordinary that in the liturgy there's an enormous attempt made to be inclusive in an interfaith way. So although he's not allowed to have Muslims pray, he's making a big show of processions of Baha'is and Zoroastrians and Hindus and Muslims, as well as Jews and Christians. The only people who are not welcome are the Catholics, because the blood-curdling oath that he has to make, the promising to keep Britain Catholic free at the heart of the establishment, are just so extraordinary. And you would think, there is no way of rewriting the coronation oath. It was not. You can't open up the questions of how many people believe that the monarchy should be Christian or believe that it should be Protestant. But be that it may, there is this dreadful contrast between the strong anti-Catholicism that remains at the heart of the establishment here and this inclusivity of everybody else but Catholics. And then this sense that Charles has done everything he can. He's been talking about slimming down the monarchy, but he's not really so much slimmed down the monarchy as slimmed down the Christianity. So much of the Christian symbolism, the feudalism, the sacramentalism, the tactile symbolism of the whole thing. Sorry, this is, I must, someone's sending me emails. If I can take that off, it'll stop happening. I hope these are, it's all being diminished and made superficial, so that not only is the service less mysterious and less long and more user-friendly, more Disney-like, but it's been emptied of much of the muscle of Christianity. And what he's done is he's doing it to placate the DI culture, diversity, inclusion, and equity. Well, this is ridiculous, because you couldn't find an institution less DI than the monarchy. It's not diverse. It's one single family. It's not inclusive. You don't get to belong to it. And it's not equal. It's all based on hierarchy. So you can see there's a moment of desperation and fear in the monarchy. We are so anti-woke culture. We better try and bamboozle the populace into thinking that we're on their side. But in so doing, they're ditching the Christianity by slimming it down and diluting it. This is a very silly thing to do, because when push comes to shove, the only people who support the monarchy will be the Christians. It's a Christian concept. It's a Christian inheritance. It's a Christian. It was born of the 1,000 years of being a Christian country. And to make yourself a hostage to fortune and put yourself in the hands of the materialist, secularist, multiculturalists is a very silly thing. Charles is walking on thin ice by constructing a coronation that sets out to achieve these things. And I think it's a great shame, because it'd be nice for the monarchy continued. But I suspect, my sense is, the monarchy is only as safe as the country is Christian, and the country is getting very much less Christian every year.
I thought it was really interesting, especially like that they're not going to have very many lords there. I saw one comment, when like the fact that you have to have the barons on side in order to be king is sort of one of the fundamental tenets of the monarchy, isn't it, really? But not to mention the fact that it's, was once seen as the eighth sacrament, sort of in a non-official way, coronation. So it really should be something that we're embracing and celebrating our Christian heritage. And I find it, I think you summed it up so well, Gavin, that, and I finding it so torturous myself. I'm finding it really difficult to get excited about it, because it is like making it a bit Disneyfied, isn't it? It's like all about the show. No one really cares about the meaning. It doesn't really mean anything. And you kind of felt Queen Elizabeth II, she meant it. She really meant it. But, when she made those promises, she really meant it. I hope and pray Charles means it. I really do. But all of this sort of dumbing down and mucking about, I totally understand that they're trying to make it so that everyone feels that he's a monarch for all of them. But like, as you say, it just seems to be a project that's doomed to failure and misses the point that everyone comes to our country because of what we stand for and represent. Surely that's something that we should celebrate. The fact that, everyone's welcome and we have got a diverse culture, but that doesn't, it's diverse because we've built this strong sort of social basis that provides that opportunity for people to express themselves and to experience respect in that way.
I thought you might say some more, Gavin.
Well, I was about to. I was waiting to see if it's your turn, Catherine. So I was waiting for you to have your turn.
No, I'm not. I'm enjoying listening. I was going to quote Pope Benedict, which I could do now if you want.
Go on, Pope Benedict before Gavin.
Any opportunity, Pope Benedict. By the way, if you're wondering why I keep going to Gavin, I'm not sure if you're aware, but he used to be the
oh, stop it!
The Queen's former chaplain.
Not an hour would go by without my being teased on this, and that's perfectly. It was just, I can cope with it every 2 hours, but every hour.
Come on, we're in America. What would be our key to the door but your chaplaincy? So Pope Benedict, here we go. The problem. Pope Benedict reminds us that without heaven, without God, earthly power is always ambiguous and fragile. Only when power submits to the measure and judgment of God can it become power for good. And only when power stands under God can it be trusted. Jesus has this power in virtue of his resurrection, and so on. I just thought that was a nice little quote from Benedict on earthly power. So let's never
very
forget.
Good. So, well, talking about earthly power, there's also earthly influence. And one of the things I felt very strongly about is I could cope with Charles being Protestant, the Protestant faith, and with all the implications of from England, offensive though all that is. But I could just about cope with it if he, in actual fact, whilst it wasn't so true during his mother's reign, it really is true now. There are a whole lot of people who are not included in the social settlement, and the people who are excluded are being the Christians. So it's the Christians who need defending. Well, okay, the king has no political power, a punter would tell me, but he does have influence. And there are people who need his protective influence. I mean, I think, for example, of the teacher in Batley who's gone into hiding and nobody cares about anymore, having driven out by the supporters of you know who. And there are, you know, it's almost a truism now, but there are the Catholic and evangelical women who pray for the preborn on the streets of Birmingham and get arrested. There are people who want to believe that marriage is between a man and a woman, as it always has been, and they can't get employment if it's discovered on their Facebook pages. There's plenty of scope for a protector of the Protestant faith exercising his influence in the body politic, but there isn't a single sign yet that Charles has any understanding that that would be what is right for him to do, even with subtlety rather than overtly. And therefore, I think I have to ask myself, where is the virtue in this? Where is the godliness? Where's the Christian vision? Where is the integrity? Where's the authenticity? Where's the courage? Where's the sacrifice? It's very short on that, and that's why I feel, I'm afraid, it's hollow. And the point where it got most hollow is in this ludicrous creative writing team at Lambeth Palace, who put of allegiance for your average couch potato to say at the very end of the service, "God save the king, may he live forever." How ludicrous is that? Who says that to anybody? How can you take anybody seriously or anything seriously that includes that? The thing has just become a piece of pantomime, and it's sad because we need the monarchy, and without the monarchy we get a president and all kinds of very bad things happen, and it's a great shame that somehow Charles doesn't have any of the vision required to inhabit the monarchy with Christian virtue, as far as we can tell.
It's a really good point. It just makes it all make-believe, doesn't it? If you're going to say ridiculous things like that.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask, does it matter that it's hollow because it's hollow and shouldn't be, or because the hollowness threatens the monarchy itself and we fear losing the monarchy and becoming a republic?
I think that's really at the heart of it. I mean, the monarchy isn't hugely virtuous in itself. I mean, you wouldn't invent a monarchy today as a way, well, not a democratic monarchy with no power. I mean, it used to have political power and influence, of course, and then Parliament tamed it and increasingly made it impotent. But it has soft power, the power of influence and drama, and I suppose pageantry is a kind of visionary beauty. We're back to beauty and the sacred. The pageantry reminds us a little bit of the beauty and the sacred, but you can't have an external. You can't have all those externals if they're completely unrelated to anything internal. You need to have something inside that reflects the outside. Otherwise, it's hollow, and it rings hollow every time it's touched. And I'm afraid, I think, for all the external beauty and the pageantry and the fact that it keeps us from a president, you can't have it constantly ringing hollow. So, there's the bad behavior of silly people like Prince Andrew, offset by the excellent behavior of people like Sophie. But the problem is the real substance has to be brought by Charles. And although I like very much what he's done with his Princess Trust, the rest of what he brings to this is not the moment to criticize him, so I won't do it. But I would forgive him a great deal if there was any sense of a grasp of the faith of his mother and his forebears and the office which he can only have by making an oath to a God it's not clear he knows or believes in.
Right, is that it?
That was nicely, wasn't it? Yeah. It's all right.
We mentioned dice, didn't we already?
Briefly.
If you do a nice little, you could.
If you're in education, and you'd like to be informed as to what your legal rights are and your ethical and spiritual responsibilities are, there is a conference at Stonyhurst the weekend after next, led by Monsignor Michael Nazir Ali, and a few, well, actually, some of the speakers are exceptionally good. And it's taking place at Stonyhurst. We'll be there. We'd love to see you there. Sign up. There's still just a few spaces left.
Yeah, do please sign up. So it begins Friday the 12th of May and runs through to Sunday the 14th. It really is excellent for anyone in Catholic education, as Gavin says, as a reminder of our responsibilities. And I know there are a lot of people, I've worked many years in Catholic education, who are, with the best will in the world, are just concerned as the culture changes around us so rapidly. What are our responsibilities? What can we stand firmly on, what ground, and what must we shift? So all of these things will be explored. Plus there's just some networking time and time to support and pray for one another and with one another, and we'll be there. So you get to have a glass of wine with Dr. Gavin Ashenden and Mr. Mark Lambert and Mrs. Catherine Bennett.
And with a golden tie.
Yeah. Lovely. Okay, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and we'll see you hopefully next week for Catholic Unscripted 22. I'm Catherine Bennett.
I'm Mark Lambert.
I'm Gavin Ashenden. God bless you.